Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Game Things. Today we'll start off our episode by talking about the most recent Legend of Zelda gameplay review trailer. So this particular trailer that was released a couple of days ago had some really interesting footage that just blows all the Zelda fans' minds out of the water. First things first, this upcoming new Zelda game will feature 4 brand new abilities. The first ability is known as Recall, which is a rather interesting ability. It's not so much for offense in general, this ability instead is more for platforming. Why do I say that it's more a platforming ability? Basically, the entire usage of this ability is that throughout the game, you encounter rocks that are falling out from the sky, and what you have to do is get on top of these rocks, use the recall ability to make yourself fly all the way up to the sky. So basically like a time rewind type of ability, but more for platforming. The next ability that I'll be talking about is called Ascend. So Ascend is another rather interesting ability in the sense that, like Recall, it's another platforming ability, but unlike Recall, you don't really need a piece of rock to make things work. You can just think of this as a wall hack ability. So basically, the entire usage of Ascend is that you can basically just fly all the way to the top and just bypass walls, which is pretty freaking cool. Then next, we have Ultra Hand. Ultra Hand effectively acts as an ability for you to kind of use telekinesis. Basically, you just summon a long ass hand that can help you reach areas that you were never able to reach before, or help you grab things that are really far away. Now, all of the abilities explained so far are pretty cool, but I basically saved the best ability at the very end. This last and final ability that was showcased is called Fuse, and it's a really interesting ability. This Fuse ability effectively allows you to use anything at all to be a weapon. For example, if Link has a branch on hand, he can look at a boulder on the floor, use the Fuse ability and create a mace that can be used to attack his enemies. Aside from that, you can also use the Fuse ability to buff your bow and arrow. Putting a monster's eye on the arrow will make it into a homing arrow. So basically the possibilities are endless. Aside from that, during the showcase, a brand new Nintendo Switch OLED version was released featuring the brand new Zelda game. So if you guys are interested in buying a brand new Switch OLED, you can consider this Zelda edition if you really like Zelda games. And that's basically it for our Zelda portion. Next, we'll move on to the next segment talking about a couple of interesting things, for example, Counter-Strike 2. So recently, Counter-Strike 2 has been reviewed to be actually real, and a couple of large name streamers, for example Shroud, Tarek, have tried out the game and it potentially can be a contender to Valorant. Granted, the game is still in development, but based on what was displayed so far, it looks pretty good. And perhaps in the future, Valorant might be knocked down a peg and people go back to Counter-Strike. Time will tell. Then next, we'll talk about a rather disappointing fact, and that's on vampire-based game Redfall. So Redfall, which was originally supposed to be something similar to Left 4 Dead 2, but instead of featuring zombies, it would have featured vampires. So recently, the game has announced that they are looking into making solo play available offline as well. This generally came as a shocker because I quite frankly don't understand why games nowadays still enforce single player modes to be online only. Like, what's gonna happen when the game server shuts down in the future? Does that mean that you can no longer enjoy this game anymore? It's generally quite weird that a lot of games are thinking of making solo play online only as well. I mean, just look at Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The game previously announced that for single player you need to be online, and it was a compulsory thing, which just really made fans really upset, and they just bashed the game really hard. Hopefully the devs of Redfall took note of this and really commit to making single player mode offline as well. Anyway, enough about the rant, let's move on to our next topic, which is on Resident Evil 4. So Resident Evil 4, which was released last week, was released to critical acclaim. A lot of players enjoyed it. In any case, I'm not here to talk about the success of Resident Evil 4. Instead, I'm here to talk about the upcoming Mercenaries mode that is set to be released on Resident Evil 4 as a free DLC. This brand new mode will be released on the 7th of April, so effectively 1 week away, and can be enjoyed by everyone as it is a free DLC. Moving on, let's talk about another rather interesting topic, which is MultiVersus. So MultiVersus, which was previously released, I think somewhere at the start of the year, if I recall correctly, it's probably around January, was released to, well, pretty good reviews because it's effectively Smash Bros. Instead on various different consoles. So effectively, MultiVersus was a really successful game because it supported so many different platforms and you can play a rather interesting cast of characters, including characters like the Iron Giant, Shaggy, Batman, Wonder Woman. There were just a large variety of options. But here's the thing about this particular game. So recently, Warner Bros. Have announced that they will be closing the game. Yeah, pretty weird. So what happened effectively was the game that was previously released during January is basically open beta, according to the devs. So this open beta will supposedly last until the 25th of June, and subsequently the game will be taken down for good and is looking to be released on 2024. When there's even more news regarding MultiVersus, we will be here to cover it, and make sure you subscribe and ring the notification bell to keep up to date on all the latest gaming news. That's basically it for all the news that I'll be covering today. Next, let's talk about some upcoming releases that you can enjoy starting today. So first things first, we have Sifu, available on Xbox Series S and X, Xbox One, as well as Steam. So Sifu, which was previously covered a couple of times on our channel, is a game that I would assume at this point you are not unfamiliar with. But just in case you guys are new listeners or viewers, let me cover the general idea of Sifu for you guys. So Sifu effectively is a action beat 'em up game with martial arts, and throughout the entire game you'll be learning more martial arts. And the thing about this particular game that made it really interesting is due to its rather interesting mechanic called aging. Basically, whenever you quote unquote die in game, you grow older. As you grow older, the main character effectively becomes more experienced, allowing him to do more damage and pull off more insane combos. But here's the catch: like all older people, their bodies tend to get weaker or they become more frail. So in exchange for more firepower, you basically would have to sacrifice your health, making you a glass cannon. And this mechanic is quite frankly very interesting because you would really have to balance the two sides and try and make it as optimal as possible, where you deal high amounts of damage but at the same time don't just die from a single hit. Aside from this aging feature, Sifu is also known for its very fluid action sequences, which players that really enjoy fighting games will definitely love. So if you just like a good action game with a good story and a cool mechanic, then by all means I highly suggest checking Sifu out. The next game that we will be covering is The Last of Us Part 1, available on PC. So I'm quite sure there's not much explanation required for The Last of Us, given that we just recently finished the Last of Us TV series, and let's be real, Last of Us has been around for quite a while and it's just insanely popular. But here's the thing about The Last of Us PC port. So according to players that have already experienced the game, the port is not really a good port. They face a lot of graphical defects. It's quite frankly rather disappointing that, the devs didn't really make things perfect, given that Last of Us is such a popular franchise that everyone would really love to enjoy. So it's just a bit disappointing, but if you have never tried the game before, I highly suggest checking it out and grabbing it right now because the game is absolutely wonderful. Then now we move on to our last and final release of the week, and it's called The Last Worker. So The Last Worker is available on PS5, PS4, PSVR 2, Xbox Series S and X, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, as well as PC. Now you might be wondering, what is The Last Worker about? The Last Worker is a narrative adventure game centered around one single CEO called Kurt, as well as his trusty robot sidekick called Skew. The entire premise of this story is Kurt is trying to run his company, I guess, and ensure that everything works smoothly. And his entire company basically has no workers at all, as he is the one and only worker in the entire area. And throughout this entire story, you basically will be communicating with the robot Skew, and quite frankly, this Skew character reminds me quite a lot of the weapons that you see in hi-fi life, which is they talk a lot. Like really a lot. If you don't really like too much dialogue, maybe this game is not for you. But if you are interested in a narrative-based game, maybe give it a shot. And that basically covers all the releases that we have for this week. Next, let's move on to our last and final segment, free things. So for Epic Game Store, they will be giving out one single free game called Tunshe. Whereas for PC players, Square Enix is giving out Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood expansion, and it is free to be claimed for a limited time only, starting from, well, this week up until the 8th of May. So if you are a MMORPG junkie and you really like games like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, then make sure to get this free expansion right now. And that basically marks the end of our episode. Once again, I was your host Ming. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will see you guys next week